Born in a humble town in Texas, Bonnie Parker's early life was far from the notorious fame she would later achieve. Bonnie was born in the small town of Rowena, Texas, in the early 20th century. She grew up in poverty, a daughter of a poor bricklayer who died when she was just 4. Her mother moved the family to the outskirts of Dallas, where Bonnie spent her formative years. At the tender age of 15, Bonnie's life took a significant turn. She married a man named Roy Thornton. However, the marriage was short-lived. Roy was frequently absent and involved in criminal activities, eventually landing in prison. This led to their inevitable separation, but Bonnie never legally divorced him. The real change in Bonnie's life, however, came with the advent of a certain individual, Clyde Barrow. Little did young Bonnie know that her life was about to take a dramatic turn with her encounter with Clyde Barrow. The meeting of Bonnie and Clyde was the spark that ignited one of the most infamous crime sprees in American history. Bonnie Parker, a young woman barely out of her teens, found herself drawn toward a man who was as charming as he was dangerous. Clyde Barrow, a small-time crook with big ambitions, saw in Bonnie a partner for his grand plans. Their relationship was a whirlwind of passion and peril. Together they formed the core of the Barrow gang, a group of criminals whose brazen exploits would make headlines across the nation. Bonnie and Clyde didn't just rob banks and small stores, they did it with a flair that was almost theatrical, adding to the air of audacity that surrounded them. But their actions were far from victimless. They left a trail of violence in their wake, often engaging in shootouts with law enforcement. Their confrontations with the police were as bold as their heists, often resulting in casualties on both sides. Yet, despite the danger, the pair seemed to relish their life on the run. For Bonnie and Clyde, it was a reckless game of cat and mouse with the authorities, a game they played with glee and abandon. Seemingly oblivious to the inevitable consequences, their life of crime was as reckless as it was relentless, painting a portrait of two young outlaws on a dangerous spree. In the midst of the Great Depression, Bonnie and Clyde's lawless exploits captured the public's imagination. They were not just criminals, but characters in a dramatic narrative spun by the media. Newspapers and radio broadcasts painted a picture of a modern-day Robin Hood story. Bonnie and Clyde were depicted as rebellious lovers, daring to defy the law and the harsh realities of the era. Interestingly, this romanticization was not entirely baseless. Bonnie, with her poems, and Clyde, with his charismatic charm, played into this image. They reveled in their notoriety, even posing for playful photographs. The public, struggling with poverty and disillusioned by the government, found an unusual solace in their story. The media's portrayal of these outlaws appealed to the era's desperate need for escapism, turning Bonnie and Clyde into symbols of rebellion and freedom. Ironically, the very media that made them famous would also play a part in their downfall. The law finally caught up with Bonnie and Clyde in 1934, marking a violent end to their criminal saga. It was a spring morning in Louisiana when they fell into a well-crafted trap by law enforcement. Their stolen Ford 5.8, riddled with bullets, bore witness to the abrupt end of their notorious partnership. Bonnie and Clyde's lives were extinguished in an instant, but their legend was just beginning to ignite. In the aftermath of their demise, the duo's infamous reputation skyrocketed. They had become symbols of rebellion, romanticized rebels against a system that had failed many during the Great Depression. Their story, immortalized in a flurry of media coverage, took on a life of its own. This fascination with Bonnie and Clyde transcended decades, spilling over into various forms of popular culture. Their tumultuous journey has been depicted in numerous films, the most notable being the 1967 classic Bonnie and Clyde, starring Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. Their narrative has been etched into songs like the 1968 hit The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde by Georgie Fame. And their tale has been retold in countless books and literature, each rendition adding another layer to their enduring mythos. While Bonnie Parker's life was cut short, her legacy continues to captivate, making her one of the most infamous figures in American criminal history.